Hey everyone, and welcome. In a world that just seems to be getting louder and more confusing by the day, there's one skill that is absolutely essential, and that skill is discernment. So today we're going to break down how to find that clarity, how to find that truth in the middle of all the noise.
So let's just dive right in with a big question, right? It's something we all wrestle with. You're scrolling through your phone, you flip on the news, you're talking with friends, and it feels like you're being pulled in 100 different directions at once. How in the world do you navigate all of that?
Because it's not just one or two voices we're dealing with. It is a constant, overwhelming barrage of opinions, of clickbait headlines, our own emotions, cultural pressures, not to mention an endless stream of influencers all telling you what to think. It's like you're trying to find your way through a blizzard of information, and every single snowflake is shouting for your attention.
And look, this isn't just some minor inconvenience of modern life. All this noise is a serious challenge to our peace of mind. It creates this sense of anxiety, and sometimes even paralysis, where it feels impossible to make a confident decision about anything.
But here's what makes it so tricky. It's not just the volume of the noise. It's that the most dangerous messages, well, they almost never look dangerous. They show up looking like wisdom, or a golden opportunity, or even kindness. As the sources remind us, even Satan can masquerade as an angel of light. It's the stuff that looks good on the surface that we really have to watch out for.
So, how do we fight back? How do we protect ourselves against all this sophisticated, disguised noise? Well, we need the right tool for the job. We need a kind of filter that can help us separate the truth from the static. And that tool is discernment.
So what is it really? Well, our source material defines it perfectly. It's the spiritual ability to see beneath the surface, to recognize what's true and what's false, what's from God and what isn't, especially when the lines get really blurry. This isn't just about being book smart, it's about having spiritual insight.
Now, this is so important because we have to be clear about what discernment is not. It is not about becoming a judgmental, critical person. It's not about being suspicious of everyone and everything. True discernment is a protective skill. It's a form of wisdom that helps you test the things influencing your life with confidence, not with fear.
And here's the best part. This isn't some magical ability you're either born with or you're not. This verse from Hebrews tells us that discernment is like a muscle. You can't get physically strong just by reading a book about weightlifting, right? You have to actually lift the weights. It's the same thing here. Discernment is developed by reason of use. You have to actually practice it day in and day out.
Okay, so if it's a skill we can actually develop, how do we do it? What does that practice look like? Well, this next part is all about the how. We're going to look at a really powerful, practical framework you can start using like today.
The Bible doesn't tell us to just blindly accept every message that sounds spiritual or good. In fact, it commands the exact opposite. 1 John tells us to test everything. It's kind of like being a detective. You don't just take every clue at face value. You examine it, you scrutinize it, you see if it actually holds up.
So, how do we run these tests? Our sources give us this super clear three-part framework. First, you test it against Scripture. That's the ultimate truth standard. Second, you test the source. Who or what is it coming from? And third, you test the fruit. What does this teaching or idea actually produce in real life?
The first test is the absolute foundation. Does this idea, this teaching, this opportunity, does it line up with what we know is true from Scripture? The Bible has to be our non-negotiable standard. We're going to see a fantastic example of this in action in just a minute.
Second, we test the source itself. And a huge part of that is asking, does this message honor Jesus? Does it reflect his character? Think about it. A true message from God is going to point people to Jesus, and it's going to sound like something he would say. It should feel like the loving, truthful, and humble Jesus we see in the Gospels.
And finally, we have the fruit test. And this one is so practical. You just have to ask, over time, what does this actually produce in my life? Or in the lives of others? Think about a belief you've held or a decision you've made. What was the long-term result? What kind of fruit did it bear?
And here are some really tangible examples. Does it lead to things like peace, humility, love, and clarity? That's good fruit. Or does it lead to confusion, pride, division, and anxiety? If a teaching or an influence is consistently producing things from that second list, that's a huge red flag that something is wrong at the root.
And this quote from John MacArthur just brilliantly illustrates why these tests are so important. He says that error isn't benign. It's not harmless. It's malignant. It's like a cancer. It might start small, but if you let it go, it can spread and cause serious damage to your spiritual health. So the stakes are really, really high.
So what does it actually look like when people put these tests into practice? Let's check out this amazing case study from the Bible that shows us the path from potential confusion to celebrated clarity.
Okay, so in the book of Acts, we meet the people from a town called Berea, and the very first thing we learn about them is their attitude. They were eager. They had the humility to be open to what Paul was teaching, even if it was new to them. They didn't start with a wall up. They started with open hands.
But, and this is the crucial part, their eagerness wasn't naivete. They didn't just take Paul's word for it, even though he was an apostle. No, they went home and they examined the scriptures daily to see if what he was saying was actually true. They were actively applying test number 1.
And for doing this, the Bible calls them more noble. They are our gold standard for discernment. They show us how to perfectly balance an open heart with a discerning mind. It's not about being cynical, but it's also not about being gullible. It's about being wise. Now, as we start to wrap this up, it's really important to remember that discernment isn't some final destination you arrive at one day. It's a lifelong journey of growth. I just love this quote from Priscilla Shirer because it gets right to the heart of it all. At the end of the day, discernment isn't really about mastering a 3-step formula. It's about deepening your relationship with God. The more you know Him, the more you know His character and His voice, the easier it becomes to pick it out from the crowd. So let's just take all of the pressure off, okay? The goal isn't to have a perfect track record of flawless decisions. The goal is the process itself. It's about the journey of growing in wisdom, maybe learning from a few mistakes, and drawing closer to God through it all. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important question. Because this isn't just about taking in information, it's about transformation. So I want to leave you with this to think about. After all of this, what's the next right step, no matter how small, that you can take on your own journey toward clarity?